some tourist agency has signed up Federico and me to design and accomplish a museum tour at Bogota's center. We have selected 5 museums for the tour. Tomorrow we are going to go to each museum to prepare the action plan.
Hi Diana, what's the plan for tomorrow?
Tomorrow we are going to meet in the Quinta de Bolivar Museum. After it, we are going to visit the Colonial Museum. The third museum we are going to visit is the Gold Museum. The next will be the Modern Art Museum, and we are fin- finished with the National Museum of Colombia.
That's good. Have you ever visited some of them, some of these museums?
Mm, just some of them. The National Museum and the Gold Museum. And you?
What a coincidence! I just have visited the other museums. We should talk a little about the museums before visiting them, don't you think?
Sure, I agree. We could begin with the Quinta de Bolivar Museum. I have some questions.
Oh, go ahead. Do your questions, Diana.
I would like to go someday, but I don't know how to arrive there. How do you get there?
To get to the House Museum, there are several transportation alternatives offered by the city, such as the massive transportation system, Transmilenio, the mass and individual public transportation system, made up of buses, vans, collectives, and taxis. You can you can also come by private car and bicycle. The closest station is Las Aguas.
Perfect. My best choice is to use the Transmilenio. So, what recommendation does the museum propose?
This is so important. You have got to know a few things about it. It is a historical monument. Observe the architectural space in detail. Direct access to the internal spaces of the house is not allowed, only its contemplation from the protective railings. To start your tour, find yourself in the garden in front of the house. Leave your suitcases at the reception, no smoking, and do not enter food.
I'll keep it in mind. I heard that the museum people can record videos for the media. Is that true? What service does the museum offer?
Yes, it is true. You can record for the media, and also the space is used by those students who need the space on the condition that they won't be published. The museum has educational services, tour with a specific theme that must be booked in advance. Among these are specialist workshops for children from first to fifth grade. They offer a museum nature tour, and also for children from sixth grade onwards and adults, more specific history topics are present. Free and independent women, the role of women in the first decades of the 19th century, Manuela Sáenz as the protagonist. Second, Doña Quinta, a journey that delves into the other families that inhabited the house and that invites its participants through a small workshop to create their own tableware. And the third, different celebrations where letters, drawing and interpretations will be created. They also have an art tour with 2,360 works of art to see, and finally they have the space rental service.
Thank you. So, what's about the Colonial Museum? I have heard a little about its history, but when was the Colonial Museum founded? Where is the building located?
You will realize that is it, that it is very easy to learn. The Colonial Museum is located in the old cloister of the classrooms, built at the beginning of the 17th century from the design of Juan Bautista I. Initially, the building was the headquarters of the Colegio Maxim de la Compañía de Jesús, and from the first half of the 18th century, the Pontificia Universidad Javeriana, it is located at the Carrera 6, 977, Bogota, Cundinamarca. The Casa de las Aulas was transformed into a colonial art museum in August 6, 1942. It was inaugurated by President Eduardo Santos and Minister of Education Germán Arciniegas.
You're right. It was not difficult to learn. I'm more interested than before. What days are they open?
The museum is open on Friday from 9 to 4:30, Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3:30, Sunday from 10 a.m. to 3:30. The museum closed on Monday, Tuesday from 9 to 4:30, Wednesday from 9 to 4:30, Thursday from 9 to 4:30, and I recommend you go to on Tuesday. That day is not plenty of people. Well, now please tell me about the Gold Museum. Who decided to keep the gold pieces and establish the museum?
It is a museum of the Republic Bank, who had bought 40 pieces of gold until 1939. They keep them in a safe instead of selling them or using their gold. But in 1939, when they bought the 15 piece, the Quimbaya Poporo, they understood the cultural value of those pieces and decided to protect it. So, it began to develop the patrimony concept in the nation. At this time, the museum owned more than 60,000 pieces with an unimaginable cultural and beauty value with a history about our country and our indigenous cultures.
Okay. I know every museum has a main piece. Which one is the main piece of the Gold Museum?
You are right, but the Gold Museum has two main pieces. These are the Quimbaya Poporo and the Muisca Raft. As I have told you, the Quimbaya Poporo is a very important piece in the museum. Its elaboration technique is very interesting too, and also it's a very beautiful piece. And the Muisca Raft because it was a cultural reflection of one of the most important cultures in Colombia, the Muisca culture. Its elaboration technique is so awesome. It was made in just one piece.
So we can see Muisca and Quimbaya pieces in the museum. Which other cultures do the pieces belong to?
In the Gold Museum, you can find pieces of Tairona, Zenú, Urabá, Chocó, Quimbaya, Muisca, Tolima, Calima, Cauca, Tierra Adentro, San Agustín, Nariño, and Tumaco cultures before the arrival of the Spaniards.
It sounds very interesting. I'm looking forward to visiting it. After it, we are going to go to the Modern Art Museum. What do you want to know?
I would like to know what internationally famous people are their works of.
The international collection includes one of the famous serigraphs of Marilyn by Andy Warhol, as well as works by Pablo Picasso, Bacon, Arp, Salvador Dalí, Javachev, Giacometti, Oldenburg, among others.
Wow, it is a lot. Very interesting. What buildings were the headquarters of this museum?
Just three, Diana, and guess what? One of them was the Faculty of Philosophy at the National University of Colombia.
What? I wouldn't have guessed. It's incredible, but what were the other two?
I know. The other two buildings were the Bavaria Building and a building designed by Rogelio Salmona.
Okay, but it generates more doubts than questions. What is the history of this building?
The Minister of National Education signed in his office the founding act of the Museum of Art, Modern Art on July 27, 1955. The Mambo worked at the National University in the Faculty of Philosophy until June 3, 1970, when after an act of protest he was exposed to insecurity. The new management achieved a new provisional headquarters in the Bavaria Building where exhibitions of great national and international artists were presented. The current headquarters, designed by the architect Rogelio Salmona, is located in the Cultural and Historical Center of the city. Its first stage was inaugurated in 1979, and in 1985 construction was completed. It has around 3,633 works by important Colombian and international artists, which are part of its permanent collection.
Wow, the mambo is much older than I thought. I want to know more about it soon.
And finally, please talk to me about the National Museum. I have heard the location was a prison before. Can you tell me the history of that location?
That's true. The location was built as a prison in 1874. In times of civil war, it was the most important jail of the country. It was known as the Panoptic, but due to its architectural and beauty values, the government decided to transform it into the National Museum in 1946, and the prisoners were transferred to other jails. At that time, the National Museum had had different locations since its establishment in 1823. It was a time in which were important to know the knowledge about natural science and economics. So they want to create a museum of natural history and schools of mines. But the Civil Wars left items that belonged to the great men of the country and their battles. They keep all of them in the museum as important elements of our history. Then, in the course of the 20th century, were incorporated elements of art, industry, countryside work, and archaeological collections. And finally now, they have incorporated elements of the diversity of ethnicities and multiculturalism as central figures to understand the history of the culture.
It's a very big museum, isn't it? How many rooms does it have?
That's a difficult question. The museum is outside. There are a lot. Let me see. Mm, Currently, the museum have 17 rooms. Some of them are in use. There are three new rooms in the first floor. There are about the history of the museum and the location and the pre-Hispanic history. There are four in the second floor. It is about paintings and objects of different times in the history of Colombia. And on the third floor, there are four rooms. They are about the new and old concept of art in our history.
Gigantic. I have heard about the annual share of history, Ernesto Restrepo Tirado. What is it?
It is a history meeting done by the National Museum since 1996. During 3 days, many speakers talk and debate about the history of the nation and its actual social, economical, political situation. It takes place every second semester of the year.
Okay, I think we'll need more than a day to visit the museums, don't you think?
A week, it seems. So, well, thank you and see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Diana.